one of the first things we'll do with any given team is help them build their cooperative assets. And assets, as you know, should increase in value over time, but they'll only increase in value over time in the context of team and cooperation if you embed them as rituals.
It's a simple question, but yet a highly complex one. What is happiness to you?
I think it just, at the end of the day, it's quality time with people you love, doing things that you love. Language matters because it drives our beliefs, and our beliefs drive our behaviour. We need to give authority to where the information is, not info to authority to where the info is.
My guest today is Emile Studham. He's a TEDx speaker, an entrepreneur who moved from Canada, from Australia, to create businesses based on his three loves. And you're going to hear all about these, which are Aussie football, community, and helping people thrive into real businesses that matter. During this episode, you're going to really hear Emile talk about how if we treat culture like an investment or an asset, it grows when we add meaningful rituals. And when we design for happiness, it creates a ripple effect throughout the organization and ourselves. Before we get into this episode, please head over to YouTube, or if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate it. I hope you enjoy this fascinating conversation with Emile Studham. Emile, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, mate. Great to be here.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I'm looking forward to diving into building high-performance teams and cultures built around cooperation, the psychology of trust, and all the good work you're doing. But first, I thought we had to start somewhere that was quite important. For anyone who watches or watched TV, we seem to fantasize about being on a reality show. For you, that came to a reality. And not only were you on a show, I understand you won the show.
Yes.
How the hell did this happen?
Yeah, it was a very interesting. I was 26 at the time. I was a school teacher in Melbourne, Australia. Specialised in sort of grades 7 to 9, which was cool. I love that age. I think I connected with that age group quite well. I still do to this day. And a mate from actually back in my sort of high school days myself sent me this little clip and said they were doing this audition for this show. And the premise of the show was, what would the average person do to become famous? And he said, Em, I think you should jump on board. So I did the audition, went through the process, and there was a series of challenges. And then the viewership would vote with the, back in with the, like the Big Brother voting,
Mm-hmm.
And there was just these exercises, if you will, and challenges. And then the major one for me was to create a music video clip about myself. So, as a good Aussie should, I took the piss out of myself. I got my best friends together. We shot it over a whole Sunday. We did these, and it worked out all right. The song was called Heaps Good in That, which was referring to me being heaps good in that. A lot of fun. And the best part about it was, now that I'm thinking about cooperation, because I'm so addicted to this concept. The cooperation I had with my friends back then was because I had a few mates that were musos. So, I kind of wrote the lyrics with one of my mates who's an advertising copywriter. The lads got a hold of the music. I got my girlfriend group, my sister and all my girls. And it was a very cooperative actual exercise together. And it's something that we share for the rest of our lives now. And we all get together every now and then. We've all got kids and all that sort of stuff, and life's busy, but it's something that particular group of friends, we all can share and have a laugh about whenever we ever catch up. And, people will sing the catchy chorus. And, I've just showed my son recently, Rio, who's 7, and he's completely embarrassed by it. And I think it will haunt him for the rest of his life. But yeah, it's certainly something fun to do.
Was that you singing in it?
I sing the verses, the verses. And I do sing the verses of the chorus, and then there's other friends amongst it. The really good singing in it is not me. That's me mate Mark and some other friends. But I do sing it kind of anyway.
It was well shot. I mean,
It was very well done, wasn't it? Yep.
I'm blanking on a lyric, but it was something about touch me and you'll go to heaven or you'll know.
Good stuff. Good stuff. What we do in our 20s, eh? What we do in our 20s.
I know. I was wondering if you had shown it to your children. For listeners, let's just say your shirt wasn't on for most of that video.
Yeah. Yeah, the good old days, the glory days.
The glory days, as Bruce Springsteen calls them.
Yeah, love it.
So, Emile, you strike me as a guy who jumps into making a music video with the lads, as you called. We'll have to have an index for some of these Aussie words.
Absolutely.
The musos.
A glossary of terms.
But you strike me as a guy who like embraces life and this idea of enjoying your life. Before we get into your work, I'm just super curious. This is something that is a simple question, but yet a highly complex one. What is happiness to you?
Oh, good question. The first word that came to mind was community. That just jumped straight into my head. Being around, being with loved ones, I think it just at the end of the day, it's quality time with people you love, doing things that you love. Well, that might be as simple as and as you say, as complex as it is, but that's when I grew up in a really tiny small town in the south part of Australia, where it was really just one big family. There was no lock on the front door. Most nights I'd come home and there'd be a cousin or an auntie or a family friend cooking dinner because mum was going to be late from work. And I look back on my youth and I feel like I just grew up in one big house, which was a 5-kilometre radius block of land with a couple of roads and maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people, right? And so all of my growing up, we were always around people. Like family were popping in, and mum and dad were quite central to the town. Mum was an integration artist. She looked after the children in the school that had special needs, and dad was a builder and a good football player and all this sort of stuff. But mum was also a seamstress. So if people had repairs for their clothes, you'd come around and see Ada, right? Ada and Huda. And I just remember always playing sport, being with people, cracking a joke, having a laugh, and being around community. So happiness for me is around, being around people. And then as I grew up, I found myself, living in university, and my house would be the central house. Then I come to Canada and I repeat the same thing, right? Like I'm in a foreign country, yet my house is the one that's central to everyone and not the people that live here. So for me, I think it's community, being around loved ones and doing and having unique. And I always say to my kids, we don't want toys, we want experiences. So it's experiences with people I love. I think brings me the most happiness and joy. Yeah,
I love that answer. You don't have to look far for any research on well-being to find that community, social relationships are a key to this thriving life.
Yeah.
You talked already a lot about cooperation, community, doing things you love. As I prepared for today, I learned that you really loved Aussie football, or footy.
Yep, footy. Yeah.
When you look at sport, I see that there. Footy.
Yep.
How is it bigger or smaller than a rugby ball?
It is a little bit smaller than a rugby ball and a bit bigger than an American NFL football. It's not as sort of fat as a rugby. It's a bit more pointed. So you kick it from hand to foot with a drop punt, and then you can't throw it. You have to hand pass it off your hand as a pass. And when you're running with it, if you run more than 10 meters, you've actually got to try to bounce it, and it bounces back to you so you can continue to run. It's our biggest sport back home in Australia, and it's crazy to think it's still relatively unknown globally, right? Even though we've got YouTube and all this sort of stuff now, it's still only played professionally in Australia. And for 100 years or so, it was only mostly played in the state of Victoria, South Australia and Western Australia in the southern states. It's only been the last 20 to 25 years where it's actually expanded around Australia. So, Yeah, footy's my sport. It's our passion. It's it's Australia's hockey, if you will. And 100,000 people watch go to the games most weekends, and the grand final's one of those days of the calendar where, it's our Super Bowl, right? So yeah, it's a big part of my life. And growing up in Wonthaggi, footy was basically, it soon quickly became a 24, like an all year round sport, even though it's a winter sport. Cricket in the summer with tennis, it soon became sort of all the time because the sport grew and it became more important and more professional as the years went by. Yeah.
As I ask you that question, I just see you leaning into the camera, grabbing the ball, and I could see how much it's embedded in you.
Yes. Yeah.
I understand, knowing your story, that sport, footy, cricket, other sports are really embedded in who you are.
Yeah.
It informs, from what I understand, a lot of the way you show up, even as a father in a business context.
Yeah.
From your lens, what role has sport played in creating who you are today?
Yeah, I think it's a really good paradigm, or gives you the perspective of what life looks like in the real world. And it's funny, when I go and do workshops now, we can quickly identify who in the room grew up playing team sport and who unfortunately didn't get the privilege to do that. And back home, we have what's called a club participation model from Europe, where you play sport within your community, right? So even at the age of 7, 8, 9, I was training 2 nights a week, and then Saturday was all at the football club. We would be the first game, and then there'd be an older age group, then the men would play, and then the main game, right? But you'd be around the club. There was club rooms with, a bar and showers and all that sort of stuff. And the town got around the club. In North America, when I came here in 99, I went to Western University in London, Ontario. I soon learned and did a class in kinesiology called International Sports and Rec, and I learned about the collegiate elitist model, where sport was played in schools. And I quickly learned from my mates at uni that, if you didn't make the high school team at age 15, there wasn't really much opportunity to play. Whereas back home, if you weren't that great a player, you just got to play in a lower level, but you still got to be part of the club. You still got that community feel with the change rooms and, personal. Some of my best mates didn't play in the best game, but they were still a part of the community and part of the club. And so with my university mates not making the university team, they kind of stopped playing sport, which then when you think about, well, what does work look like? You've got a boss, you've got a coach, you've got teammates, some you love, some you don't get along with. Sport gives you a target to shoot for with other people. Business, we should have a target to shoot for with other people. So the parallels are very, synergistic. But here in North America, there's a larger portion of the population that don't actually and haven't played any form of competitive sport because they weren't that necessarily good. And I didn't like that about the system here. I didn't like that at 15, you weren't good enough to make the basketball team, so you just stopped playing. And that was the inspiration for my first business, Aussie X, was taking Aussie Rules football as a sport, as a vehicle to get kids active and engaged and make the connection that physical activity made them feel good, irrespective of their ability at sport. So by using a sport that no one knew, we're able to level the playing field, and the uptake from the schools was quite enormous and fast because it got the shy and introverted kids up, and it brought the sporty kids down a peg a little bit because now they weren't unreal at the sport. They were just like everyone else. And I think that's a beautiful thing. That's another part I think about happiness. Having unique and significant emotional experiences with people you love that are the first time you've done it, or then sharing an experience that you love. These are the things that we're going to go to our grave with, right? Not the things that we have, but the experiences we've shared, right?
I just got goosebumps. I'm a hockey player.
Right.
My entire life, my child is.
Yeah.
That shared experience of
huge.
winning a good game, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Those go to the grave, to your point.
100%.
A lot of my training and background is in positive psychology, which is the study of well-being.
Yes.
There's a popular model called PERMA, which is basically ingredients for a life well lived. And when I think of sport, or as you're answering this through your lens of sport, it hits all the domains, which are positive emotions, engagement. So in flow while you're playing, relationships, meaning, you're collective, you got a meaning, you're playing the sport, and in
Yep.
accomplishments, you're winning, or maybe not winning the game all the time, but winning the little parts of the game together. So it's fascinating the role sport plays. When you launched this program into the schools, what, if anything at all, caught you by surprise in how quickly everyone, I guess, was appealed to your programs?
So the first time I took it to the schools was in 2003. I was just traveling back to Canada. I think at the time I was probably chasing a girl or two, I'm now 23, 24. And
Did you show them the music video?
no, well,
No.
I hadn't done it by then.
Oh, they would have been.
We use that later in life for me later.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 2001, when I came back again, I found that there was an Aussie Rules Football League here in Toronto, where I do reside now. And ironically enough, the field is just down the road from where I live now, of the team that I started in 2003. So in 2003, I came back. I shipped a bunch of balls over from the league, and just went around to schools and offered my services through a connection I had here, and started charging them a fee for our services. The first day I went to go rent a car from Budget, and I was only 24, so I didn't have a international license. And back then you had to be 25 to drive a car. So I had to turn around and catch the tram and the train and catch public transport to schools for a whole year, with this hockey bag, a Bauer hockey bag filled with these balls to teach kids how to play footy. Anyway, the first 3 sales were all girls' private schools. Now, back in 2003, Aussie Rules football was a boy sport, and netball, which is a bit like basketball, but you can't run with the ball, was basically what girls played. And so immediately what I noticed was how much the girls got into this sport, where they could tackle each other, they could bump. And also I learnt the power of language and having an accent, because as I would say g'day girls or g'day boys or whatever, and I'd say good on you, mate, and all this sort of stuff. And they would start to copy, right, and try to mimic what we would say. So as the program evolved, we turned some of these sayings into the core values of the work. And what I found was the schools weren't buying Aussie Rules football. Honestly, who cares about it, to be honest, as a Canadian? It's got no connection at all. But the schools will buy values, because values drive behaviour. So I learned very quickly, to answer your question, that language matters. Language matters because it drives our beliefs, and our beliefs drive our behaviour. And so then as I've gone through this journey, I've come to realise that what drives beliefs is the environment and the experiences that the environment creates. So Aussie X was then formulated in 2008 off this 2003 year, where I learned that people don't really, as Maya Angelou, I think, says, people don't remember what you said or what you did or the achievements you have. They remember how you made them feel. And then combined with language and attaching values to funny ways of saying things. And now that I see, Culture Code shares a really good story about Danny Meyer and the most successful restaurateur in New York, and building language that drives the desired behaviors that you want. So the language part was the big, and again, the accent helped, especially. It got us into doors. And people like to mimic accents, right? Like I often get taken the piss out of in a workshop that I'm doing these days. But I think that the engagement of the normally shy and introverted kids, and how they stepped up to have a unique experience with their mates, was lesson number 1. And then lesson number 2 was the power of language and the importance of creating your own, especially in team environments. Yeah.
You strike me as an incredibly creative guy.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Going into these schools and coming up with this idea that formed Aussie X.
Yeah.
I really like this idea that the values, they inform our beliefs, which then, as you mentioned, they dictate our behaviors. Yep. How do you get that message across in a way that actually is resonant with people and not just words?
Yeah. I think it's about I think it's about rituals. I think it's about embedding rituals. So in our line of work at Cooperation Works, our mission is to transform 21st century work environments to optimize human cooperation. As AI does and skyrockets, we have to double down on how we're engineering the environment for our humans to cooperate. Because the speed of work is so accelerated now that if we're not in cooperation with each other, we can go and do things and build things that don't matter, waste a lot of time and money. And in fact, I got clients right now that are spending money to reverse the impact of some of these things that have gone on that weren't in cooperation and alignment with the goals and objectives of the organization, right? So one of the first things we'll do with any given team is help them build their cooperative assets. And assets, as you know, should increase in value over time. But they'll only increase in value over time in the context of team and cooperation if you embed them as rituals. So once you've got a cooperation code of vision, purpose, behaviours, as I call it, then you embed that code into your interactions with your team. And so then when we share stories of, from our TED Talk, Catch the Good, you can use the behaviours and the purpose that you've created as a team to catch the good. So I've got these little cards here, actually, which is pretty cool. They're 4 different colours and they've got positive words on them. So maybe, a willingness to be involved in most activities is what the yellow card says. So if that's one of your team behaviours, maybe your team behaviours is be willing to have a go, to use one of ours here. And then you embed it as a ritual into when you meet as a team, then the language will organically compound over time and that asset will become even more valuable. And you use that asset then to recruit. You use them as questions. You use them to onboard. Okay, well, you can learn all the mechanics of the job, but really the first thing we should be learning is how we want to behave with each other and how we want to cooperate. So the language piece comes from first building that cooperation code and doing it with your team. And the earlier you can do it, the better, right? And that's why I love working with teams of 0 to 50 people, because you get to build and you get to, lay the foundation. As I always say, you wouldn't build your dream home on wet cement, right? So if you can get that foundation right when you've got 0 to 50 people, when the world's not too crazy and overwhelming, because it eventually does get there, you've got these rituals that are connected to your cooperation code that helps build the house later on. And I work with a lot of enterprise companies as well, where we're trying to actually sort of break down old and existing structures that aren't helping them cooperate. Like, in fact, it's the poison to cooperation, these silos that have been built from the Industrial Revolution years. But the language matters because it helps build new beliefs, which then drives those new behaviours.
So you're saying don't just put values on a wall and walk by them every day. That often happens.
Yeah.
I hear you talking about, going back to our sports here, is there's a difference between like playing together and belonging together.
100%.
With whether it was in Aussie X or your current company, which is Cooperation Works.
Yep.
Yeah. How what's an example of how you actually live these values, embedding them through rituals?
So there's 2 examples I would come to. Probably the first one would be Aussie X, right? Like when we went through the process of building our code, we wrapped everything around one very simple statement, just 2 words: extraordinary impact. How could we have an extraordinary impact on everyone we came in contact with, whether it be the children, whether it be the office ladies at the school, whether it be the principal, whether it be a teacher, or whether it be the janitor or a parent. But also, and maybe more importantly, each other. Because if we get it right internally, it becomes our competitive advantage as our external customer service. So once we got extraordinary impact, which as Aussies we nickname everything, it just went down to EI, right? That became embedded into our language. And so everything was put through the lens in a split second of EI, because we operationalized it. We met and we reviewed the hand passing exercise of the football program, we would go, right, how can we make it more EI? What parts of it right now is EI? We want to keep that, but we can improve this part. So it becomes the reference point to be able to have conversations about performance and the reference point to make decisions. It becomes a decision filter, and that's the power of a really well-defined purpose in 7 words or less, accompanied with very clear behaviours of we know what to reward and to challenge of each other. And so Aussie X really grew where once I got out of the way, to be quite honest, Sean, and let the code do its thing by just simply being the culture keeper of the rituals. Because the rituals compound. And as a money man, right, it makes sense. We keep going back to that investment, and we keep putting a bit more dollars into that investment. The magic, the 8th wonder of the world, next thing you know, and I talked about it in a TED Talk, there came a point about 1.5 2 years into my journey after really hitting the skids that I sat with Connor at a restaurant in Toronto and said, Cogs, I don't know what I'm doing anymore in the company. I feel like I'm letting the team down. I don't have much to do, and I'm feeling a bit like I should be doing more. And he said, Dragon, when you talked about me coming from Australia over here, you said to me, you want to build a business where everyone feels like they own the company. That's why I came from Australia to have a go here. You've done that, dude. You've done that. Like you've hit your purpose and your vision for the business. And that was the tipping point that actually got me into this work today, because I started then coaching other teams through this process that I'd learned about, build a code and then just embed it as rituals, and then back in those rituals to compound and make that asset the most valuable thing you have in your company. Because then you can recruit through it. You can onboard through it. You can have all your conversations and all your decisions run through the code. And now I get the pleasure to do that with teams, and I just love it. I really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate this idea of investing in the code or the vision and it becoming this asset that just continues to grow. I'm curious, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about other companies that I've felt this with. Coming to mind, Starbucks right away. They had a little green book, I think it was called, and they're known for that surprise and delight.
Yep.
How, if anything at all, have you observed when companies embed this vision, this culture, and they're really excited for it, they're investing in it, but whether it's the owner getting out of the way, in your case, that was a good thing, but sometimes, the owner's not ready to come out. But how do companies retain that authenticity when they start growing?
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? Can you scale culture? My answer is yes. You really can. And I think the best way to do it is do it as early as possible, so those rituals become so embedded that even if you tried to do something different, it would be more cognitive load and more behavior change to do it poorly. Right. That's why you see sometimes in sport dynasties occur, because from my lens, I see they've just embedded their behaviors to the point where they've become habits. And so then winning becomes a habit, right? Now, will you win all the time? No. But you'll give yourself the best chance to do that, right? But the scalability part, it just keeps coming back to rituals. And one thing we've done a lot more over the last year or two in particular is one of the cooperative assets in our formula and in our system is the preloaded calendar. So when you think about sport, I get the pleasure to coach the executive team of the Blue Jays, right, who are now in the World Series, which is absolutely fantastic.
Tough one last night.
Wow. I mean, I can't say I stayed up the whole I had to get up to 45 for the kids, but I mean, it's such a great story. And just from a culture perspective, watching that team go from, highly talented to now highly talented and of extreme high character, it's been wonderful. But the, you get the game schedule of the Leafs, of the Blue Jays at the start of the year. You know where all the games are, right? So you can plan around that. Now, even maybe last year or the year before, there were the fires in California, and the NFL even moved a game to be played in Arizona. Like, the game still went ahead. My argument is we can do something similar, but in our businesses. We can get ahead of the year and say, right, here's all the meetings we're going to conduct. Here's all the reviews we're going to conduct. Here's all the performance reviews we're going to conduct. Here's where we're going to be in playoffs. I've got a few teams now that look at their year like a sports team. And that for an accounting firm, for example, February to April is playoffs. You play injured, right? You do whatever it takes. And then in May, it's the off season. It's vacation time. It's recover. And that's what sport does really well due to the fact that it has seasons, off seasons, pre-seasons. Players get surgeries and get back. I think we need to look at our businesses more like a sports team and think of it as an interconnected ecosystem. So one of the cooperative assets that I recommend teams build, and it takes a bit of time, like it's not something that's just an hour-long or day workshop. It's actually a very iterative process. But come the start of the year, what would be ideal is on, say, January 2nd, there's hundreds of calendar invites so that everyone on the team knows the time that they're going to commit to each other, just like the Blue Jays know what games they're playing and where they're playing them. Then that way the craziness and the chaos of the external world can still happen, but we're more in control of our environment internally. Because if you get that environment right, it does become your external customer service and your competitive advantage. And to talk about language with the Starbucks, the genius of Starbucks was the language. They named the sizes their own thing. So you now haven't got a venti or, I still say large and small, but I know that there's frappuccinos and things like this. When your language becomes their language, your client's language, I always say you mate like penguins. You mate for life, because you cannot say no to yourself, right? So that belonging, they built a second home outside of work and office. They magically built a second home for many, many people, and they scaled community. When you really think about it, right? A sense of belonging is just another word for community, right? It's absolutely genius. Their language became the client's language, customer's language, and that's a huge part of our work, is helping teams first build that code and then operationalize it through rituals and through their client journey.
Hi, it's Sean. I know I'm breaking into the conversation just for a moment. There's good reason. If you're here, it means you care about living with more purpose, more meaning, and deeper connection. And that's exactly what the YouPotential podcast is all about. When you hit that subscribe button, conversations like this, the ones that challenge you to think differently and open to new possibilities, keep showing up to you every week. And when you share this episode with someone you care, you're not just passing along a podcast. You're giving them a chance to reflect, to grow, and maybe even to reimagine what a good life can look like for them. So please take a second, subscribe, share it with a friend. Let's spread the conversations that truly matter. Now back to the show.
This idea of embedding the language and having the clients, the staff, I think is really, really important, because it becomes our own. And soon everything you're saying is the code, the culture. I'm actually living it and I'm becoming it. And we're getting that ultimate cooperation and community that you talk about. It almost seems like you're building, or you're consulting companies to build that 5-kilometer square radius that you had back at home.
I love that. Yeah, I never thought about that. That's pretty cool. And I always think about all the shapes we use in our company are triangles, right? Because triangles are the strongest shape, and each part of our formula has 3 pieces to make that shape, right? Vision, purpose, behaviors. But it's really good. And then that when you put that code on things, people have to earn their way into your triangle, right? And it works as a bit of a metaphorical and paradoxical tractor beam for people that believe what you believe, but also metaphorically as a force field. So if it's not the right person, the force field goes up, but if it is, the tractor beam kicks in. And if you keep using it in a ritual sense, like one thing I see a lot that hurts organizations is this sort of illusion of loyalty, right? That drives performance. My life now with 2 young children is very different to what it was in my 20s, right? Like my freedom to work and work long hours, or I have that freedom to do whatever I wanted, really is completely different to today. If you embed your code into your preloaded calendar and use it as a reference point to make decisions, you can uncover people that want more and want more responsibility and want to take a step up as a leader. But also you identify those that, their life's changed to the point where maybe they're better off in another tribe for a little while, right? And Patty McCord, the lady who built the original sort of Netflix culture, speaks about it beautifully, right? Your system should be able to have people consistently opt in and also opt out of your culture. And she's got great stories where a team member might have had an unexpected fourth kid, right? And like, whoa, I can't give everything. But there was a job at Facebook that would be better to suit that lifestyle. If you embed your code and ritualize it into reviews, you'll help people step up and become their best version of themselves, and also identify people that need to move on and go find a better tribe, because everyone goes to work wanting to do a good job, right? They want to do a good job. But sometimes your life experiences or your life environment doesn't allow you to do that. A good ritualized code helps you make those decisions and continually build belonging, high performance, and allow people to thrive and also step out when need be.
What an interesting way to look at this self-selecting, and
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
I mean, we spend a lifetime working.
Yeah, that's right.
Employers, we hire
An amount of time.
employees who spend a lifetime working for us.
Yep.
This idea of having a very vibrant, I'll call it, or well-known and established culture is critical as I'm thinking about this, because it lets people self-select where they want to spend that time. And you started this off saying somewhere where some leaders or organizations get it wrong is like loyalty.
Yeah.
I can't help but think, though, if I have a very strong culture, very strong code, and it aligns with someone, damn, I'm going to get a loyal employee out of that.
100%. You get both. It's an and, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I guess the point I was making there was a bit the illusion of loyal, like that we have to be, because loyalty can turn into complacency,
That's what I'm hearing.
right? And again, we're in the game of building an environment that's high performing and a sustainably high performing environment. And that's not all sunshines, lollipops, and rainbows, right? I guess one of the misconceptions maybe around culture is that it's the soft skills, like it's the fluffy stuff. I don't like, and I think Simon Sinek backs us up here. Our work's extremely connected, but it's human and technical skills, not soft and hard. There's nothing hard about fudging and adding a zero in an Excel spreadsheet and fudging a financial report to make you look better than you are while you're alone in your office, right? And there's nothing soft about having a tough conversation with your boss because they've stepped outside of the code and you need to call them out for bad behavior in a meeting. There's nothing soft about that. So I think it's human and technical skills. And so when you have a really well-defined cooperation code and you've operationalized it, it consistently allows people to be a part of it and be all in. And if they're we lose people, we have illnesses, we have all sorts of things that come and go in our life. A good review system embedded into a preloaded calendar will help people thrive and also go, look, my life's just out of control now. I've got to look after the family. I can't give everything I've got. All right, well, then can we augment the role or can we help you go find another position? So these are beautiful things that I think no matter what, the goal is that we find our community where we can thrive.
Emile, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about your journey as an entrepreneur. From sport into business, exiting a business, starting another business. I know you've been involved in many different businesses. How have you personally thrived that was the word you ended with,
Mm.
despite environmental chaos. And I
Yeah.
say this because you're big on the environment, and
Yeah.
any business owner knows that there are seasons, to use the word we've been talking about, that's chaos. It's
Yeah.
the injuries in sport. How have you been able to recognize the injury, get your surgery, and get back into the game when the storm hits?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's been a constant challenge. It's not something I can't say I've mastered it.
You're not Superman?
Yeah, I'm not Superman, certainly not. I do wear
All right, we got to close this up. You're not lying. You're not Superman.
I was watching a podcast the other day, Jocko Willing just talking about everything's incomplete. Like, once you
Yeah.
realize everything is incomplete, then life's a lot better. Like, you get to an end of a day and you're like, oh, I didn't get to those 3 things. Yeah, you got tomorrow. It's like, and tomorrow you'll have another 5 or whatever it might be, right? But what comes to mind, I mean, exercise, getting up early. Like, I was a baker when I was in my sort of late teens, just to make money in the country. I baked. So I learnt the unfortunate skill of not respecting sleep, but I also learnt the skill of being able to wake up and just get into it, right? And then when we had Rio 7, a couple of years before that, one of my mates said, the challenge of having children is you lose a large amount of your personal time, right? You take it for granted that, you wake up and you got a couple of hours of quiet time before work or exercise. That gets shrunk.
Mhm.
So I took that to heart, and so I sort of trained myself to wake up at 4:30, 5:00, knowing that when our sons or children came to life, that I'd have that routine of being able to get 1, maybe 2 hours to myself before the chaos of the day kicked in. So that ritual of getting up early and getting that time to myself to get either work done or exercise or just literally go for a walk, and listen to Audible. I think that's been really, really handy. And I also think the other thing is, I'm a very big believer in the subconscious and what is the first thing that you wake up to and what is the thing that you go to sleep to. So I wake up and I read a daily statement using the Think and Grow Rich curriculum. I read that before I go to bed to put, faith into my subconscious. But at night, I also do a journal. I do a 3-2-1 journal. 3 things that I achieved, 3 or more, 2 things I'm grateful for or more, and 1 thing or more I'm looking forward to. So 3-2-1. Some days getting 3 accomplishments feels like pulling teeth. Sometimes I write 12 things and I could write for 5 hours. 2 gratitudes and 1 looking forward to. Takes all of maybe 3 to 4 minutes, but I know now, Sean, that when I miss a few in a row for whatever reason, maybe travel or the Blue Jays are on and I fall asleep on the couch, I talk about positive psychology. That's why I really asked PERMA. Is that Martin Seligman?
That is, yeah.
Yeah, love it. So that I can, if I miss a few days in a row, I know I have. And I can go back to that journal. And what I've done now is I've got a journal. We've got a bed downstairs. We've got a bed upstairs. I have the same sort of book, and I can look and say, yeah, I missed 3 days in a row. That's interesting. And so I think that what you do with your first 20 to 30 minutes when you wake and the last 20 to 30 is absolutely mission critical for our general happiness and well-being.
As leaders, business owners, like learning to stand in that messy storm, that hard storm, it's part of the way of being. And I'm always interested to hear how, if anything at all, people cope, deal with those storms. And I'm hearing a lot of inner work for yourself, inner well-being.
I think so. It's the one environment you can control, like you do have control over. So again, we talked a bit before off air, but what am I passionate about, and where's a lot of my thoughts and attention going today? It's going to how do I help companies and myself engineer the environment that I am in control of to optimize cooperation, right? And in a team sense, it's cooperating with your teammates, right? And in my family sense, it's cooperating with my wife and my children, right? And in my personal life, it's with me mates. So how do I create an environment that optimizes cooperation? Because at the end of the day, studies have shown, the longest human study, what makes a healthy, happy life was the strength of your relationships. And that, I think, comes from the environment. And I do believe wholeheartedly that ultimately that is an environment that we have a significant amount of control over, right?
So as you look at this chapter of your diverse life that include famous musician in Australia,
Yeah.
football player, when you look at this chapter now with cooperation works, I really like this idea of designing the environment. So what I'm hearing here is that it facilitates cooperation and community, etc. How do you see leaders or companies best tackle this initiative in this day and age when the external world is in a storm? It's chaos. AI is taking over everything. Emile, it's over. We should just all go play Aussie football and make music videos in Australia because this work doesn't matter.
Yeah. You're fucking caught there. I've had many a conversation recently with my wife, Dre. Why don't we just go back to Monthaggy and, live at the edge of the earth and,
Live the simple life.
Yeah, well, it's a 2-minute drive to the supermarket. Wear shoes if you want to, don't.
The ocean air is there, maybe?
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind. And what I touched on, I'm currently writing my book at the moment, and the way I've structured it is I'm sharing, there's a part of the formula, and each of the cooperative assets, and in each chapter I'm sharing a famous sports story, a personal story with the teams that I've worked with, and then maybe a famous business story. And I'm looking constantly at controlling the internal environment, right? So one way that we can improve, and also I'm looking at the environments that are repeated, that happen all the time consistently. Team meetings is an example. A lot of people, if I was to do a study, everyone I work with, and did a survey on what are the top 3 things that annoy you about your workplace, I would say 100% of surveyed people would have in their top 3 meetings, right? Now, people don't dislike meetings. People dislike shit meetings, where they can't contribute, their voice is not heard, and they walk away going, well, that was useless for me, right? And that often shows up when a leader comes in and goes, right, hey, Sean, did you do what I said you should do? Good. Terry, Sarah, and it's quite directive and in and out, right?
Yeah.
The leader comes to the meeting stressed with whatever they're carrying baggage into the meeting. And under pressure, some people will just sort of overtalk and control everything. Some personality profiles will have no process at all, and it's just a higgledy-piggledy every single time. Some people will default to high process and no collaborative talk, and everything in between. A simple way to elevate psychological ownership inside of meetings is to flip it and go, right, team, here are the questions I'd like you to have answered to the meeting. And then the leader plays the role of the facilitator, or even a better word, I think, is conductor. When you think about a conductor of a band, right, they control all the music, but they play no instrument, yet they control all the music. So if you conduct the meeting where Terry shares his answers to the questions and we all hear those answers, whatever they might be, and you can be very selective with the questions. And then we ask questions to Terry. Cool. All right, over to you, Sarah. And then everyone's voice is heard, answering the same chosen questions. So we learn more about each other. Because truth be told, Sean, all of the dysfunction and all the money lost and energy lost in organizations today is 95% between teams. It's the dysfunction between the teams. Now, the old world pre-internet, working in your silo worked. It kept us safe, right? And you knew your role inside of your team. Plus, the organization owned the information. So leadership was decision-making and problem-solving for many years, and many of your listeners would have grown up in an environment where you went to your boss for answers. We all did that, right? Now with the internet, and the information being democratized and out there, the challenge of the 21st century leader is to flip it and create an environment where the information is now at the field. We need to give authority to where the information is, not info to authority to where the info is. This is a 180 for what most of us grew up with, right? So with that in mind, we have to then run our meetings differently and create an environment where everyone's voice is heard so we can learn how best to cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a flip in itself of a very specific example of a model that we train leaders on. Run your meetings and flip who talks. So then if you've got a list of 11 things that were part of your answers and 8 of them were talked about by the team, you've only got 3 left, right? Because you're actually trying to empower those with the information to make decisions without the need of you. So there's this sort of existential crisis for leaders today in that success looks like not doing much work, right? Which
Well,
I know for
your
me,
conductor example or analogy or metaphor is perfect. As you're saying this, I can just envision people coming out of a meeting saying, that was good. You know, I felt connected to Terry, as you spoke to. I felt like I was heard. I felt like a level of emotional safety in this meeting.
a good modern day team meeting should look like a workshop, in my opinion. It should look like a workshop. If you had a camera in the corner and you filmed your meetings like Ray Dalio has for years, and you just watched it in isolation, you should go, yeah, that was what was that workshop about? And that was just a weekly sync team meeting. Huh. Right. And I think there's some research out there, probably in Culture Code again, one of the best books going around, the highest performing teams. When you add up the amount of time that people speak, there's a nice spread. Like if there's 5 people in a meeting, I think the research shows that they all speak about sort of 18 to 22% of the time. Maybe a bit more for some people, a bit more extroverted and talkative and introverted, but there's this good balance of everyone's voice being heard to optimize cooperation. So that's in your control as a leader, right? How you run your meetings will control. Email templates. That is a repeatable process that we do lots of times over the given course of a week. Have you got email templates that helps people set expectations for a meeting or set expectations for whatever it might be? That's just a simple press your signature, click on that template and fill it in, but you don't have to type it every single time. These things compound and over time get you time back again to spend more time walking and thinking, right? I don't think leaders literally schedule and block thinking time. I've just got space and I'm just going to go for a walk. And it's through the annals of history, the great thinkers, the great leaders all ritualized and scheduled thinking time, whether it be a walk, whether it be laying on your back and just looking up at the stars. There's just time to let the brain figure stuff out, positive psychology, all that beautiful stuff, let the connections be made. But if we don't create the space, the connections don't get made.
That time is so important to process,
Yeah.
to think. And, well, thank you for that. Emile, you're doing some wonderful work. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And I feel like I could chat with you forever. There's so many other areas I want to dive into, but all good things must come to an end. Before we give you a time to tell the audience where they can find the great work you're doing, where they can find your website, where you can help organizations create these thriving cooperative organizations, I got one last question for you. You mentioned you had a son. I believe you said his name was Rio. I wanted to get into being a father, but we don't have time. Nonetheless, the final question I've asked everyone so far is, Emile, let's imagine now you're at the end of life. It doesn't matter how old you are. Perhaps you're back in Australia. It doesn't matter. You're sitting somewhere, though, that brings you complete peace, ease, and contentment. You're sitting on a front porch. looking out at a beautiful view that has you totally relaxed. You decide to bring out a notepad to write a letter to Rio's kids on what you learned was a key for a meaningful life. What would be in that letter?
The first thing that comes to mind is have a go. Just 3 simple words, have a go.
Mm.
And that's my Aussie, and again, it's actually it's funny that it's a comeback full circle, but, I think the regret that sometimes comes up to me is did I have a go? Like, did I actually put it on the line and put myself out there? And I think that all the wonderful, funny things, whether it be, video clip or whatever, it was just there was a moment of I don't even know if I would think. There was just a moment of, "Oh, I have a go at that." And that led to, "Yeah, I'll go to that audition. What time is it? 8:00 on a Sunday morning? Yeah, I'll go to that." I think just have a go, because without that first step, nothing happens. Takes courage. Sometimes it probably just takes downright stupidity, right? But I think it is courage, and you don't. Yeah, that would be it, because there's so many beautiful things spawn off having a go, right? Like the self-doubt, the judgment, all those things kind of go away when action is taken. And Paul Callery was a wonderful guy at university. I think he's passed away now, unfortunately, but his favourite saying used to be, "On the other side of fear is freedom."
Mm.
I think that the letter would say have a go, because if you have a go, it leads to action, it diminishes the fear, and it leads to the freedom. So that's what I would say, I think.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Have a go.
Have a go. Have a go.
Have a go. I need to work on my accents when I say that. Well, for listeners, where can they find your work, your TED Talk, and anything else?
Yep. So cooperationworks.com or emilestudham.com. How to Make Teamwork a Habit is the name of my TED Talk. It was a couple of years ago in Luxembourg. Wonderful experience. So you can contact us through the website. I actually don't have much online, to be honest. I just have the website. I've been lucky enough to build a business, heavily built on referrals. I'm taking it all to the next level now. I'm in the process of writing a book, an online program, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, cooperationworks.com is where you can find me. And we help organisations engineer their work environments to optimise human cooperation, to elevate the capacity of their people and sustain that elevation over time.
We'll include all that in the show notes.
Beautiful,
and
mate.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you so much, Sean. Cheers for now, mate.
Thank you for tuning in this week to the YouPotential podcast. I love that conversation. Emile, he's such a good guy and brings this energy that is really contagious. This big idea that really stuck out for me is how we treat culture like an asset or an investment. It really compounds through time, especially through intentional rituals, and how we can choose happiness on purpose, both in our lives and our professional lives. So this week's reflective question is, how are you investing in yourself and or the people or teams around you? Because sometimes it's not the answers that change us, it's the question. If you like this episode with Emile Studham, please check out episode number 1 with Mark Bowden. He's the world's leading expert on body language, and we dive into how to master communication and connection in every part of life. I know you'll enjoy that conversation. And finally, don't forget, subscribe here on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, and I'll see you next week.